Hey, it's Dale from Redeemer Bible Church, and this is the Daily Word. Today is Thursday, May the 14th, and we are in Luke chapter 20 still. And what we're finding is that we still have Jesus being followed by the religious people of the day, and they're still trying to be cunning, and they're still trying to be um, uh, divisive, and they're still trying to catch Jesus in making mistakes and get him to break the law, to expose him as a false teacher. And obviously, Jesus was not a false teacher. He was God. So everything that came out of his mouth was truth. The one thing I love about chapter 20 in whole, and really the rest of the Passion Week, as Jesus heads into the time of the Last Supper, and then into obviously the trial, and then even the crucifixion, is that every time Jesus is confronted by somebody, especially a religious leader, but he also did this with Pilate. Anytime somebody confronts him and tries to challenge his authority, his wisdom outshines their lack of wisdom and their lack of knowledge. To understand that the religious people of the day especially were they weren't ignorant of the word, but they didn't care about context, and they did not care about the heart behind the word. By the time Jesus is on the scene, we've got thousands of years of a religious system that added to and added to and added to God's law. And they built upon God's law with man's law. And here we have Jesus in chapter 20 being confronted by the scribes about the resurrection, about marriage, and what that means if a husband marries a widow, and in heaven, who's really the husband there. And obviously Jesus responds to them and lets them know, like, hey, in heaven, you're not given into marriage, so it's not going to be an issue. Stopping them in their tracks. But here's the part that I want to talk about today. Jesus, with the scribes there, and I'm assuming that it's not really in the text, but I'm assuming there are a crowd of people here, right? In verse 45, Jesus turns to his disciples right in front of the scribes and in front of everybody else. And what does he say? Beware of the scribes. Beware of the religious people. And he goes even further. Not only does he say beware, he tells you why. They take advantage of widows. Now, we don't know all the ins and outs of this, but Jesus did, and he basically accuses them of stealing from the most vulnerable people in the population, widows, which goes against what God says in the book of James is what perfect religion is what? Visiting orphans and visiting widows in their affliction. What does that mean? You're joining in with them in their affliction. That means you're helping them. You're providing resources for them. You're leading them spiritually. And what Jesus says here, beware of the scribes. Why? Well, what does he say? They like to walk around in long robes, and they love greetings in the marketplaces. They love to be seen in front of other people, decked out in their religious garb. They get the best seats in the synagogues. They're the places of honor in the feast. And then he lays it out. Who devour widows' houses for the pretense, and for pretense make long prayers. They devour widows' houses? They take advantage of widows. So there's some speculation. I read a couple different commentaries that they actually use some kind of law, from some kind of temple law, some kind of law that they had developed to force a sale or to take over possession of widows' property if they were behind in temple taxes, things like that. So the heart behind perfect religion, pure religion, talked about in James, is that you have a heart to protect widows. And here Jesus is saying, you know what? No, these scribes have a heart to devour widows. Yikes, right? So what does this mean for us today? We always want to talk about that. So this is what Jesus was talking about and talking against in the first century. What does this mean for us today? Well, sadly, we still have religious people taking advantage of widows. We have religious people taking advantage of the most vulnerable, right? I think about the prosperity gospel, the word of faith movement, who make a boatload of money by guilt and shame and empty promises to who? The most vulnerable in our population. So pure religion, perfect religion that we talk about that is revealed in James, as James 1:27 to be exact, is that we have a heart to protect orphans and widows, not to devour them. So Jesus, being who he is, right in front of the scribes, tells his disciples, beware. And you know what? That scripture speaks loudly to us today. Beware. Beware of the religious people. Beware of people who like to walk around in long robes. And today, maybe that's a three-piece suit that costs $3,000. Beware. Don't be attracted to those things. Don't be fooled by the appearance of a religious leader. Follow Christ. He is your only hope, and he's the only one that is going to lead you where you need to go, not the religious leaders. This has been the Daily Word. Join us again tomorrow for more. We'll see you then.